In the last session, we had finished chapter 5. In this session, we now start with chapter 6. We have discussed this before. The Gita is a Mahakavya or a very elaborate commentary based on the Chandogya Upanishad. It is in the it is schematically the way the Upanishads are a dialogue between the teacher and the student. The Gita's 18 chapters are divided into the Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. The first 6 chapters are based on Tvam, which is the individual self and is based on Karam Yoga. How an individual can grow through Karam Yoga, how he can come to a realization through Karam Yoga. The next 6 chapters are on Tat, which is Tao, which is the Brahmin, and these are based on Bhakti Yoga. The last 6 chapters are based on Asi, which is the identifying of the individual with the Supreme Self. And this is based on Gyan Yoga. The term yoga here does not stand for the actual yoga, which is all the gestures and the stances and all that. It actually means path, like Bhakti Yoga, the path of Bhakti, Karam Yoga, the path of Karam, Gyan Yoga, the path of knowledge. There are 3 paths that have been primarily identified in the Gita, which are Karam, Bhakti, and Gyan. These 3 paths are not separate, they're not independent from one another, but together they form a whole. They are interlinked, they're not independent, they all get you to that single moment, which is moksha. Basically, what we've also understood through the Gita is that the 3 paths normally cannot be practiced one without the other. You have to understand Karam Yoga to get to Bhakti Yoga to get to Gyan Yoga. In chapter 2, Ved Vyasa has beautifully worked on self evolution to guide us towards a purer thinking, purer meditation. Chapter 3, he gave an elaborate explanation of Karam Yoga, the path of action. The principle of renunciation of action in knowledge was given in chapter 4. In chapter 5, he explains so beautifully the ideas of action and renunciation of action. Renunciation is renouncing a sense of doership, a sense of I, me, myself, I did this, I'm the doer, and abandoning or removing all attachment or an anxiety about the fruits of action. And he's explained this so beautifully in chapter 5. Now, in this chapter, he goes on to explain how to give up your weaknesses and positively grow into a healthier, stronger, more integrated, evolved personality. This is called Dhyan Yoga or path of meditation. This path comes with an understanding of Karam Yoga and Yoga of knowledge. Control over the body, the senses, and intellect is extremely necessary in Dhyan Yoga. If you can't control your body, if you can't control your mind, if you can't control your senses, there is no way you can get into Dhyan of any kind. And all of you who have tried meditation would understand this so completely. That is why this chapter is called the Yoga of Self Control. The first 9 verses of this chapter reiterate the 3 stages of spiritual development which were described in chapter 5. He explains it again that a yogi or a person who is going towards that path of spiritual development, who has worldly vasanas, worldly desires, worldly attachments, needs Karam Yoga to evolve spiritually, because it is through Karam Yoga he understands singularity, understands that the sense of yagna, the ability to do something without getting attached to the fruits of the action, without getting attached to the goals or getting attached to the results, and knowing that you are not the doer. From Karam Yoga, he sheds his vasanas, his desires, his attachments to become a sannyasi. A sannyasi is somebody who goes into meditation to quieten his mind to reach the path of Gyan. Both Karam Yogi and the sannyasi aim at the same goal, which is self realization, and their sadhanas may be different, because yes, the Karam Yogi path is a little different, the Dhyan Yoga path is a little different, the sannyasi's path is a little different, but the ultimate goal is the same, which is self realization, self evolution, self development, spiritual growth. And through, I do need to clarify this. When we keep talking of spiritual growth, the importance of spiritual growth is not just spiritually or to meet the maker or to get moksha. When you evolve and grow spiritually, your day to day life, your life as a householder, your life as a mother, father, brother, sister, son, husband, daughter in law, parent, it doesn't matter, a business owner, a worker in a corporate, your life becomes better. You're able to shed your anxieties, you're able to shed your stresses, you're able to shed your attachments. And the moment attachments go, grief, anger, hurt, pain, all these emotions go with it. So, a spiritual growth literally equals a better day to day life, which is why there is so much of stress on evolving yourself spiritually. He does explain, Ved Vyas does explain this again, that though the yogi and the sannyasi are both on the same spiritual path, the sannyasi is the one who has developed a disattachment to the world and to the material, to the Maya. And he is capable of meditation and self evolution. In stanza 2, he talks about Sankalp. Sankalp is a Sanskrit term, a yogic philosophy that refers to a heartfelt desire, a solemn vow that we take, an intention, a resolve to do something, that is called a sankalp. It is a vow, it is a resolution, it's an affirmation. Vedya says nobody can become a Karam yogi if you have the sankalp for future actions and expect the fruit of such actions. Basically, he's saying that anybody who has that sankalp, a resolution, a desire, an attachment, an affirmation to the future, to the results, to the goals, that person can not become a Karam yogi, because the very essence of a Karam yogi is somebody who is not attached, who detaches himself from the sense of doership, works in the spirit of a yagna, who understands duality and is moving along the path of singularity. He says that Karam Yoga, practiced without regard for fruit of actions, without regard for or attachment to any goal, any result, becomes a stepping stone towards Dhyan Yoga or meditation. He goes on to say that for a person who cannot practice meditation for prolonged periods of time, and there are a lot of people who can't, and there's nothing wrong with it. There are a lot of people who can't meditate for long periods of time. There are duties, the responsibilities. It is not possible to take out 4 5 hours on a daily basis from your day to day routine to sit down to meditate. However, such a person who works with no attachment, no desire, no emotion to the goal or the result or the work itself, except that this is my duty, I have to do it, the Karam Yoga path. that person's mind gets as purified as a person who sits for meditation for long. He's basically, what he's saying is that a person who goes about his day to day life, who goes about his duties, who goes about his actions without attachment to the result, without attachment to the goal, just does his duty the Karam Yoga way through the spirit of Yagna, that person's mind will get as purified as a person who sits down in meditation for hours on end. Both the paths lead to the same path, which is purification, evolution, development on the spiritual path. In stanza 4, Krishna brings out the word yoga ruddha. Yoga, yoga ruddha is a person who's established in yoga. He says that when a person is without mental attachments to sense objects or actions in the material world, that person has gained mastery over his mind. When the mind is free of any attachment, there is no question of the mind getting distracted by longing, desire, or any other kind of emotion. Basically, what Ved Vyasa says is that somebody who has gained complete mastery over his mind, withdrawn himself from all sense objects and activities of the outer world, and has also conquered that sankalp, the sankalp of a future, the sankalp of a goal, the sankalp of a result. Such a person is called a yoga ruddha. Ved Vyas goes on to explain that man is basically a dual personality. He thinks he ought to be morally strong, ethically perfect, physically loving, socially disciplined, that perfect personality. But in actual reality, when you come to the reality of it, he is a victim of his attachments, his likes, his dislikes, love, hate, all the duality that is there, grief, joy, sorrow, pain, everything. He is a part of this. Till he does not realize his own duality, there cannot be any religion for him. By religion, what we mean is growth, spirituality, the understanding of the Maker, the understanding of the Creator, the understanding of the Greater, far above, of whom we are a part. All this understanding only can come when a person understands the duality. Actually, this is really beautiful. All of us believe a certain version of ourselves. We believe we are that best version where we are so saintly, so godlike. We have no bad thoughts, no bad emotions, no bad actions, no jealousy, no hate, no anger. We are just this perfect human being. In reality, if we actually look at what we believe of ourselves and what we really are, there is quite a disparate between the two. To understand that disparity, to understand the reality of who you are, you have to step outside of yourself and you have to look at yourself dispassionately when you're doing something, when you're saying something, when you're behaving a particular way. Very important, you have to be dead honest with yourself about yourself. And then this disparity comes away, that duality of who we think we are and who we actually are. You know, I internally have always felt I am this meek, timid, shy person. It takes a lot of effort for me, and I know internally how much of effort it takes me to step out, to be vivacious, to talk, even to conduct classes, to go into groups, to go into discussions, all of that. That is what I believe is my reality. That is what I feel is inside of me. But when I step outside myself, when I see others' reactions to me, when I ask others their opinion of me, when I become third party observer to myself in these situations, I realize there is a disparate. That meek, shy person is nowhere visible. You can't see that person. So, what is my reality? Is my reality that weak, shy, timid person, or is my reality this outward, gregarious, outgoing, outspoken, confident human being? When I merge, it's a little of both. I cannot be this confident person. I can't put this face on forever. So, somewhere, this is also a part of me. That shy person is also a part of me. But the two have merged together to become this whole, and that is my reality. All of you need to understand your own realities. Please, when you're in a situation, become third party observers. See who you are, see the way you behave, see the way you react. Then go inside yourself and check what are the emotions that made you behave, react, etc., whichever way you did. Combine the two, and that is when you start understanding who you are. And it is only through this understanding of who you are that you will be able to evolve, grow out of the duality, come to a point of singularity. It is beautifully said by Dr. S. Radhakrishnan. If our impulses are under our control, if our personal self offers itself to the universal self, the later becomes our guide, the latter becomes our guide and teacher. Every one of us has the freedom to rise or fall, and our future is in our hands. And one of the ways to understand this is to understand the duality inside us, what we believe of ourselves, what is in reality. Merge the two to grow, to become better, to evolve. In verse 7, he goes on to further explain exactly what a yoga rudra is. He says a yoga rudra is when the mind has reached a state of equanimity. He goes on to explain that what prevents you from reaching that state of absolute equanimity, absolute stability of the mind, it is, he breaks it up. Three-fourths is relating to the body, heat, cold, vagaries of nature. Three-fourths is relating to the mind, which is pleasure, pain, grief, sorrow, and three-fourths is relating to the intellect, which is honor, dishonor, and other such things. He says, in spite of all these obstacles that are there in our path, if the focal point is constant and is towards self realization, it can be achieved. He says, a man who is calm, in control of his senses, and detached stays unruffled, irrespective of what situation or circumstances. Such a person who is calm and serene is never disturbed by the pair of opposites, is never disturbed by the duality that we face on a daily basis. A person who is free, a yoga rudra, who is free from all this, who understands the duality, comes to a point of singularity, that person becomes free. In stanza 8, he goes on to explain that knowledge gained by the study of the Shastras is, and through your own experiences, is called Vigyan. He says to a person who has conquered his senses, a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold are the same. There is no difference. A person whose heart remains unchanged in spite of being surrounded by worldly objects, who is not disturbed by the happenings of the world, the vagaries of life, nothing disturbs his equanimity. Nothing disturbs his peace of mind. Who is who does not get anxious, who stays in a state of equilibrium. This person is akin to a saint. Such a saint remains tranquil, irrespective of what is happening around him. That is where Ved Vyasa is taking us, to that sense of equanimity, to that peace of mind, where nothing disturbs us anymore. This state of equanimity is the foundation of spiritual evolution. Without this state of equanimity, spiritual evolution is not possible. If you are constantly going to be bothered by what is happening around you, by what life throws at you, the curveballs that are thrown at us, if you're constantly getting disturbed, if you're allowing them to pull you down or to elevate you, if you're going into grief, if you're going into hurt, if you're going into anger, into pain, how are you going to move along the path of spiritual evolution? It is not possible. You have to detach slowly but steadily, but detach nonetheless to really go on your journey, go down the path of evolving. Vedvyas very beautifully explains the methods of self development and the technique to achieve perfection within yourself, which is attainable by all. It is not something that, oh, he can do it, he's renowned, or she can do it, she is renowned. It's none of that. Each and every one of us has the ability to attain this. So basically, he has broken up the practices of meditation into four. The first one fourth is Rahasi Sthita, is remaining in solitude. It is sitting alone when you practice meditation. This does not mean you have to go to a jungle or a cave or become an ascetic or renounce. It just means that withdraw. Doesn't matter where you're sitting, withdraw your senses to isolate yourself from the world around you. I know I can sit and meditate with the TV blaring. I can meditate with the dogs barking. I can meditate with the doorbell ringing, the phone ringing. People walking in and out of my room. Half the times when I'm sitting and meditating, especially in winter, when I snuggle up into this cozy, lazy boy with a blanket all around me, the maid will come in, she will make the bed, she will vacuum, she will do the poncha, she'll do the dusting. Nothing will bother me till somebody will actually either really call out my name or shake me, or my dhyan breaks on his own. This is what he's trying to say: solitude. Gather your senses around you, detach from what is happening around you to get into that state of solitude for meditation. And when you learn to do that, you can pretty much meditate anywhere, anytime, irrespective of what is happening around you. Yes, one way of meditating like this is to find a quiet corner in the house and sit down to meditate. I find that it is easier to train my brain to just detach from what is happening around me. The only thing that I leave as an intent is that if there's an emergency, I should snap out of it instantly. But other than that, nothing will bother me or break my meditation. Then the next one fourth is ekaki, aloneness. Ekaki is alone, means to sit alone, where meditation is done physically alone. I know there's a lot of power when you meditate in a group, but I've always found that the best meditation I can do is by myself, alone with myself. When it's a group, it is an energy for sure, but I it's really the aloneness that takes you to a different level of meditation. And all of you who've been practicing the silent meditation for the last 2 weeks would understand what I'm trying to say, that meditation is so beautiful when practiced alone. When you practice alone, you develop more self control, you develop more detachment, you develop a stronger sense of being in that meditative plane. The next one fourth is yatat chitatma, which is self control. Do not become excited. Do not get strained. Do not get anxious. There should be no restlessness, no turbulence. The heart should be clean and pure to just reflect on the Supreme Creator, that part that lies inside of you. And this is so, so true. If you are anxious, if you're stressed, if you are strained, if you're worried, if you're nervous, if there's too many thoughts in your head, how can you meditate? You can't. You can't do any kind of development. You can't do any kind of evolution in that state of mind. It's also scientifically proven the brain functions on different levels, different cycles per second. The higher the frequency, the less the ability of the brain to function with logic or common sense or knowledge. The lower the frequency, which means the calmer you are, the better you function. So if your mind is turbulent, your frequency, brain frequencies have gone very high. There is no way you can function, let alone practice evolution or spiritual development or meditation for that matter. The last one fourth is aparigraha, which is free from longings, free from longing of possessions or longings and attachments of any kind. This is that spiritual state. It is not material at all. It is a state where we have complete control and mastery over possessions, attachments. We free ourselves from that attachment, which is so material, so Maya, which creates those longings, which creates those desires. And when we have that extreme attachment, when we are controlled by those desires, we don't get to hear the voice of the Supreme Being, the voice inside us, the voice of the Brahman, or the voice of the Self. Right through all the chapters of the Gita, it has been pointed out again and again. Sometimes, obviously, sometimes through words or as an undercurrent, that our happiness is inside of us. It is not outside. If you go to seek that happiness outside, you're never going to find it. To find that happiness, you have to look inside. I've always believed that that universe you're seeking is inside us, that God you're seeking is inside us. Why do we spend so much of time and effort looking outwards for something that we carry within us? My God is inside me. My happiness is inside me. My peace is inside me. My contentment is inside me. My development is inside me. All I have to do is turn my gaze instead of outwards, turn it inwards and try doing that and see the kind of difference it'll make to your life. Everything that you're looking for, everything that you're seeking. And I know that mostly when you ask somebody what do they want, usually the first answer is peace, peace of mind. But that peace of mind is not achieved outwardly, it is achieved inwardly. When you turn inside, when you look at yourself, when you grow, you evolve, you understand the duality, you come to a point of singularity, you get away from your attachments, your desires, your fears, your anger, all of that automatically. You don't even have to strive for peace of mind. It automatically happens. One way to reach here, to turn inwards, is through meditation. It's a beautiful way to discover yourself. I think the most of what I've discovered of myself has been through meditation and in meditation. Stanzas 11 and 12. Krishna gives a detailed explanation of how to meditate. He breaks it up. He says, first and foremost, you should have a clean place to sit. When your outer surroundings are clean, the mind tends to be less disturbed. Having said this, let me also tell you that you can pretty much meditate once you're used to it. You can pretty much meditate anywhere. You can meditate in a pile of rubbish. It doesn't make a difference because you've detached completely. But yes, one thing, and this is explained, Vastu Shastra says this so many times. A cluttered environment creates a cluttered mind. One way to declutter your mind is also to declutter your environment. So, this is what he's saying, a clean place to sit when you meditate. He says that the external has a direct bearing on the mind, and in most cases, yes, it does. He says that the person who's meditating should sit still without any movement because movement destroys concentration. I agree with him when you start off. That is a very good way to start. But subsequently, again, through experience, through practice, to believe, I do believe that if you want to fidget and don't fidget, it'll break the meditation. Whereas it's very, very difficult for all of us to sit cross legged, to sit with your back erect, to sit absolutely still without any kind of movement. Initially, when you're training your mind, it is important. Subsequently, none of this matters. What he says is sit on a seat which is comfortable, allows you to keep your back erect, back straight, hands interlocked in front of you. Normally, I find that when I sit to meditate, automatically my fingers go like this and my thumbs join like this, and the hand rests on my lap. This is an automatic pose, I assume. Krishna makes Ved Vyas makes a very beautiful point. He says, when you're sitting to meditate, sit on a lower seat, not a higher seat. He says, too high a seat causes, and this is so logically true. When you're sitting to meditate, if you're sitting very elevated, there is a sense of you will topple over. Whereas when you're sitting lower, that sense of balance is maintained. So your meditation does not break, which is why, if you notice, most of the asanas or most of the gaddis that people sit to meditate on are normally floor level. They're not high, they're not like erected up on a platform. It is definitely a fact that when you sit on the floor, when you sit lower, you actually hold your balance better and you meditate better. What he does say is kusa grass, he says it's supposed to help with meditation. Kusa grass is supposed to connect you with the higher energies. He says place that on the ground, place a sheet on that to protect yourself from damp or anything, and sit on such an asana to meditate. Sages in the old used to always sit on this grass to meditate. It does help enhance the levels of energy. Having given all these pointers, at the same time, he also says that by doing all of this does not automatically mean you will get into meditation or get into development or get into evolution. He says for that, the mind has to be single minded, it has to be focused, and it has to be detached from external, it has to be detached from the vagaries of life, it has to be detached from stresses and anxiety, and very single minded focus towards that meditation, towards that evolution, towards that spiritual growth. According to Krishna, Chit Shuddhi, which is the purification of the heart and the mind, is a matter of discipline. If we bring in the discipline, we will attain it no matter what. Another pointer he gives is that the person who sits in meditation should hold his head and neck erect and turn the gaze to look at the tip of the nose. When you turn your gaze to look at the tip of the nose, everything else fades away, everything else becomes blurry, everything else becomes hazy. It's a beautiful way of bringing your focus onto one object and defocusing from the world around you. He does point out again and again that the head, the neck, and the spinal cord should be in one line. They should be absolutely straight when you sit down to meditate. And if you go into yoga, you will understand that this alignment of the head, the neck, and the spine in itself is the right posture that triggers the body towards peace, serenity, and calmness. A word of precaution though here. if you look at the tip of your nose for too long, there is a very high probability of feeling dizzy or feeling disoriented. Basically, the purpose of bringing your focus here or bringing your focus here is to make sure that you are not distracted by your surroundings, you're not distracted by what is happening around you. It is basically getting you to focus. Another very beautiful way to focus is literally close your eyes, turn your eyeballs upwards. The moment they go upwards, they go into this eye socket here, so it automatically blocks off all ambient light. And that in itself is a trigger to meditation. In stanza 14, he says, serene minded, fearless, firm in the vow of brahmacharya, having controlled the mind, thinking on me, and balanced. Let him sit in yoga, having me as the supreme goal. When you have fear in the mind, fear of the known or fear of the unknown, it is very difficult to sit down, to meditate, to go into dhyan, or even to find peace of mind. Fear is such a strong emotion and very, very debilitating. What he says is that when you turn inwards, when you concentrate on the supreme, when you concentrate on me, the supreme, the God, the creator, there is no place for fear at such a point. All you have is serenity, calmness, joy. The mind becomes so peaceful, so joyous, and completely fearless. He talks of brahmacharya. Normally, the connotations of brahmacharya is celibacy and renunciation. But that is not what he's talking of here. Here, when he talks of brahmacharya, he's talking of a detachment. He is talking of, when he's talking of brahmacharya here, he's talking of self control. He is, he is likening brahmacharya to self control, not to celibacy. Self control in regards to stimulants, self control in regards to self gratification. That is what he's saying is brahmacharya. Without this self control, the mind will go all over the place. It will not be able to, without this control, you will not be able to withdraw your mind from the external to bring it to the internal, to bring it inside, to get that equanimity, to get that peace of mind, to get that sense of calmness, peace, content. This is the only way to get your mind to become still, not vacant, because it is virtually impossible to have that kind of vacant mind, but concentrate on the supreme, the creator, the maker. So Krishna goes on to say, talk about, he's already explained the physical pose, the mental stability, intellectual self application. He now gives the last step of meditation. He says that a person who's gone through the first three stages, which is physical pose, mental stability, intellectual self application, such a person constantly keeps his mind free from agitations to reach the supreme. By constantly, it does not mean that you are not doing your duties or you're shirking a life or you're becoming an ascetic or you're running away into the forest or anything. What he's saying is that when you are in that meditation, your mind is constantly still. You actually reach that state of silence, that state of dhyan, that state of meditation where you're completely still, no turbulence, no disturbance. You come to a point of silence, which is so beautiful. Once you reach that sense of silence, once you reach that sense of stillness, it stays with you. Even when you get out of meditation, it stays with you. Initially, maybe it'll stay for a short period of time, but as you practice more and more, it becomes the state of your being. The actual being inside you becomes still, it becomes silent, it does not get disturbed at all. It is literally that even when you're doing anything, you're always in a meditative state. You never really snap out of it. And when you reach that stage, watch your pulse. See how your pulse drops. My resting pulse can be as low as 40. And when I'm exercising, yes, it may. When I'm exercising, yes, it may peak to 140, 142, I think is the highest it's ever gone. But it takes seconds for it to drop down into the 80s. Like it's so fast when the pulse comes down. And my normal pulse stays anywhere between 60 and 74. And there's always this sense of peace inside me. I very rarely get agitated, very rarely get disturbed. The inside of me, the core of me, very rarely gets agitated. In verse 16, he goes on to explain that moderation is so essential. He says yoga is not possible for a person who eats too much or does not eat at all. So you have to eat, but the right amount. So don't be a glutton and don't starve either. Or for a person who sleeps too much or who is always awake. Moderation is what he's saying, that for anybody who is practicing any kind of dhyan, any kind of that, moderation is extremely important, not an excess of any kind. Excess either which way creates disharmony, creates a disturbance. And this includes even fun. Too much of fun can also be excess, and too little of fun can also be excess. So everything in your life should be done in moderation. In stanza 17, he goes on to explain moderation in every aspect of life. Moderation is not a denial of activities like eating or sleeping or having fun or going out or any kind of recreation. He says moderation in every aspect, and that includes meditation, that includes selfless work, that includes every activity in our life, that everything that we do should be done with moderation. What he's trying to say is what is important is restraint, not abstinence. That means don't give up. Do whatever it is. Like if you want to have mithai, have that mithai, but don't have 1 kilo at a time. If you have that 1 kilo, you are going to have repercussions, and how. So basically, what he's trying to say is just moderate every activity in your life. And on verse 17, we end this session. We'll start from verse 18 next week.